Hey, it's Mazzy. Welcome back. This video is going to be a little different. This is just a hangout conversation I had, actually several put together with my friend Dizzy. Dizzy is about almost a decade older than me and spent a lot of time in San Francisco and saw a lot of great shows at Winterland and the Fillmore West, as did I. And people love hearing conversations, at least some people, of shows of around the world, shows they've seen historically, some major acts. So I thought I would just, this is a good time right now, early in the year, to share this. And also it was inspired in part by two friends of mine who have channels. There's Lost Mix Tapes. That's Todd, who started this series occasionally he does, where he pulls random ticket stubs from his collection and talks about those shows, as well as the Long Cut, who echoed that and did the same thing. And that's my friend Chris down in California. So there'll be links below to those channels. I've done a number of these conversations with my friend Jashid Brooks and other friends, where we talk about shows we've seen in San Francisco. And I think I did one of the Vinyl Rich Sheet talking about shows that we've attended in the past. So without further ado, just a conversation with Dizzy, and here we go. So I have Dizzy here, and people love to hear our stories about San Francisco, the San Francisco music scene of the 60s, 70s. And you and I have been talking over the last year about shows we both went to at the Fillmore West, Winterland, some of the other, mostly Bill Graham shows. I'm sure maybe some Chet Helms, Avalon Ballroom maybe too, Golden Gate Park. So there's probably some shows we overlap, we went to, we'll never know for sure, maybe. But let's talk about them. You mentioned one that people don't think about. There was a period of time in the late 60s or around 1970 maybe, when Bill Graham was really trying to mix things up, and he brought Miles Davis to the Fillmore. I can't remember if that was 70 or 71, but didn't you see one of those shows?
I did. It was at the Carousel Ballroom, which was on Market and Van Ness,
which became the Fillmore West.
Intersections in San Francisco.
Right.
It was on top of an automobile dealership, a Chevy dealership, and the fun thing about it was you paid down by the street, came up a narrow stairway to the top, and it was an old-time ballroom, so it had a bar in it. It didn't sell at the concerts alcohol, but it was a small bar, and you're going to have this huge crowd, and that's the only place you can get a Coke or something to eat, and it would just be snack food at the most.
Right.
And then you sat on a wood floor, and you just kind of figure the Miles Davis at that time in the stage was on the far wall, away on the length of the ballroom, right in the middle, and he was stylish as far as what he was wearing, and every member of his band.
That's when Betty Davis, his wife or girlfriend at the time, was pushing him in. He was very influenced by Sly Stone and that whole thing, the rock. He saw all these young kids. He could play one night at something like that and get paid what he'd play a month in jazz clubs.
Oh, there was a jazz club in San Francisco that I used to frequent, which was called the Bothan.
Oh, the Bothan.
And it was on Divisadero.
Right.
And it was like a old barbershop or hair parlor or something like that.
Right at Masonic, right? Was it near Masonic, that one?
It was near, it was on
Divisadero.
Bell,
Right.
At Bell and Fillmore.
Oh, God, okay.
Bell.
Okay.
It was right there.
Now the Carousel, okay, Bill Graham first opens the Fillmore Auditorium, which was on Geary at Fillmore. Then he closed it down. It was next to an old synagogue because the neighborhood was getting funky for a lot of people. And he moved and he took over the Carousel Ballroom, the one you're talking about, and renames it the Fillmore West. So the Fillmore West are two different buildings. And so Miles played the Fillmore West, correct?
Well, it was the Carousel.
Oh, what?
I went to the Family Dog. I went to Fillmore, the Carousel, Fillmore West, whatever. There was even, of course, Family Dog on Van Ness and Geary, and there was even ones that were at the Longshoremen's Hall that was down at Fisherman's Wharf.
Right, that's where they had the acid
Those
test.
were not frequent, but I would say they happen at least 6 times a year.
Winterland was interesting because I think both you and I, at least I used to go with my parents there because they would have the ice shows. It was like a giant ice
Shipscads and
skating.
Johnsons,
The ice follies, the ice capades.
ice capades, yeah.
And then
it still had pictures of past Olympic winners that were in those shows on
Exactly.
the walls, and it had big displays promoting the ice capades as you walk through that huge arena. Let's think of it as an arena, because it was almost like an early sports arena.
And it held about 5,400 people.
The doors, when I saw them, was at University of California, Santa Barbara,
Oh,
which
wow.
was in Goleta.
Well, my friend Jashit Brooks saw the Doors and Jimi Hendrix down there. Did you ever see Jimi Hendrix?
I did. I saw Jimi Hendrix at the Fillmore. It was his first time he went through the United States.
Was that 68, I guess? Probably.
About that, yes. And on the show was Hourglass, which was the early name for the Allman Brothers before they decided to be the Allman Brothers.
Right.
Exciting show. I'm telling you, folks, when he did, what's a Buell number that...
Sergeant Pepper?
That's right. He did Sergeant Pepper. And when I heard Jimi Hendrix go into that, I went, you are blowing my mind. I start to become getting into that whole lingo. I'm about to go, dude, that was far out. Big Brother and the Holding Company. And before they ever come on, and I'm sitting on the floor, I hear a voice that sounds familiar to me, and I turn, and there's Janis Joplin, and she's there with friends of the band, having just the greatest time, laughing, probably having a little bit of something to smoke and things like that. And boy, did she had such a good time. But I saw many, many musicians before they came on or after just come out, and nobody bothered. And the Matrix was about 50 seats, no more than 100.
It was tiny.
And I saw the Jefferson Airplane there. I saw Quicksilver there. You could see, because you see, they would go in there on a Monday night, a Tuesday night, a Wednesday night, just as long as it wasn't a weekend. And it gave them good practice, tune-up time.
Marty Ballin was a co-owner of the Matrix. And in the last few years, there's been recordings that have come out of the Velvet Underground.
That's right, there
and
has
the
been.
Doors. The Doors, right after their first album came out, playing the Matrix.
Yeah.
I was too young because as I recall, maybe I'm wrong, I think that was a 21 older because they had alcohol.
Oh, definitely, that's a bar.
Yeah. Go back to Winterland and especially the Fillmore and Carousel. Talk about the light shows.
Oh, the
because
light
remember
shows.
Jim Abrams headlights, and there was always the light shows were like a band. They were added to the poster list.
Well, the good thing is Mazzy, I've looked up Jerry Hahn, H-A-H-N, I believe.
The jazz artist, guitar player, right?
Oh, you know, I'm mixing him up.
No, Jerry Abrams.
Abrams.
Yeah.
And Jerry Abrams has a website. It's funny because I used to live in a collective, if you want to call it, or
Were you a hippie?
commune. Yes, I had long hair, beard. The
You were a
whole thing.
hippie?
Oh, I had.
You look like a mafioso.
No, gosh. Yeah, a lot of the people that I was living with, one thing they didn't do was wear shoes.
Oh my
Everywhere
God.
they went without shoes.
I don't wear shoes when I'm home
Yeah.
anyway.
And they thought nothing about it. Anyway, you can see those light shows. They're not just recreated. There's film on them. And you can see how beautiful they were. It's on the look him up, Jerry Abrams, and you'll see. And I believe I have 2 copies of it. There's a book of the light shows from Fillmore West.
Wow, I didn't know
And
that.
Fillmore East, all of Fillmore's, and I have 2 copies of it. Now the thing with that is, I wish it had been a tabletop book.
Yeah.
It's about mid-size tabletop book.
Well, the Jefferson Airplane was the first San Francisco band that was actually signed to a major label. 1966, they were a folk rock band, takes off, and of course, 67, Surrealistic Pillow became probably up till that point, well, definitely up to that point, the biggest selling of the San Francisco bands. And all the labels started coming up and signing them. But I would argue that around 67, 68 into 69, the Jefferson Airplane were the best live of the San Francisco bands. They got kind
Totally
of
agree.
wonky later, and the Grateful Dead were interesting, but not as tight.
Well, I like the songwriting, and I was especially give credit because he's gone now. Marty Ballin wrote some terrific songs.
Yeah, he did.
Just some terrific songs. And on that first album, Takeoff, those really were the, I want to say, crown of creation.
Yeah.
You know, he also wrote the song Volunteers.
Right,
And
right.
I to this day can find myself humming or singing that song. I love that song.
One generation got old, one generation got soul.
Grateful Dead could play every week and pack them in.
Yeah.
Every week they could pack
They could
them
play every night.
Yeah, every
and if
night.
it wasn't the whole band, it was an offshoot of the band.
And they had such a following, but they deserved that following because they put on just a terrific show. Jerry Garcia and that, we'll call it freeform electric jazz, a jazz rock, because it was beyond description, and it was so exciting. You never know where he's going and what he's going to do, and all the singing was terrific. Great ensemble work. Very, very good band. I want to say I won't forget the blues bands that came through.
Yeah.
Paul Butterfield coming through, and he had Michael Bloomfield, Alvin Bishop, both from San Francisco.
And the Electric
Mark
Flag,
Knopfler
all that. Yeah.
from San Francisco.
Wow.
Electric Flag. I never saw them live, but it had Nick Rabinaitis
Right.
from Paul Butterfield in that band. Those blues bands that came through. And remember, Muddy Waters came through. Now, even country acts came through. I never saw it.
Albert Collins, Albert King.
Johnny Cash played the Fillmore.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, you know, we saw just about every kind of music that was popular at the time. And then Miles Davis. We saw, and there was other bands that came through.
I'm about a decade, 9 years younger than you, so mine's more spilling more to the 70s. I'd say my favorite bands live at the Winterland were the Airplane and the Dead. I saw the Dead probably a dozen, 15 times at Winterland. I saw the Airplane. David Bowie, when Ziggy Stardust came out, 500 people showed up. He wasn't big yet there. The Last Waltz in '76 with the band. And I said Pink Floyd. I think Pink Floyd. It was 6 months before Dark Side of the Moon came out, and they played the entire Dark Side of the Moon. And then Springsteen in 1978 was a great show. So mine are the later acts there. Many others, you know, Tom Petty.
And I'm thinking that by then I had moved, not out of the Bay Area, but I had moved south. And it wasn't as easy for me to go to those.
Right. But New Year's Eve, I mean, 71, 72, New Year's Eve of the Grateful Dead.
I did that many, many times. With that included with your ticket price breakfast.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for the discussion.